What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. You can probably hear it in my voice. This is as detailed as a video as I can make on any subject in my life. It's very, very interesting to me that once I started making NASCAR 25 commentary, creators literally came out and apologized for overhyping this game. But we do still have some that are clinging to hope that this is going to be the answer to all of our NASCAR gaming issues. So when I watch What If Racing, when I watch Disco Inferno 70, I value the opinion that you have because I know, number one, you want a good racing game, and number two, that you love NASCAR. You love racing. So that's why I'm even more astonished that when you watch this footage that you guys don't ask questions, that you don't look at this and say, hey, wait a second, something seems really off. So I'm going to start by saying this. I am 99% sure when we raced road courses in ARCA, we had rear springs leased to us. I know for a fact that happened at Talladega. We got Eibach springs. I think they were 600 pounds, 400-pound springs. I could have swore they did it at the road courses too. I don't know that they do that anymore, but I do know this is the rule book, okay? And this is just as important as football rules, baseball rules. Now, a casual fan, you may look at this and not fully understand it, but regardless, it's the rule book. This is the life of the sport, guys. And the bottom line here is that you are limited to 5 inches of travel, and the distance between the upper and lower rear coil spring mounts is what defines that. You have 2 inches of variation on your rear jack bolts laterally. So in layman's terms, they want to keep the rear end housing as straight up and down as possible, and they want to limit suspension travel. So with that understood, what's crazy about this is the physics in this game are going to be a real problem. So I want to look at these post-wreck tire temps and wear. Okay, this is what I did many times with drivers. So I've talked about before, one of my quote jobs would be to go down, General Tire, Hoosier Tire, when the car came in off the track, practice, qualifying, didn't matter. They would be there to give a tire temp sheet to you. And you would look at those sheets, you would look at the tires, you would look at the wear. A lot of times you see on pit road, they'll heat the tire with a blowtorch to get all the marbles off, and then they'll cut across it with like a putty knife to get down and look at the tread wear indicators, because you want to know what is the tire temp and what is the wear, because that tells you everything about the car. The driver can only tell you so much. The tires are going to tell you what's really going on. That's why this is so important, okay? So when I look at this, I can learn a lot about what's wrong with the car. So the left rear is the hottest tire here, and the left front is the second most worn tire here. So it's safe to assume that we spun off the left rear. That's why that tire is so hot. And I just want to briefly go through some corner geometry concepts. Okay, so first of all, on corner entry, and I don't care if you have a lawnmower, if you have a race car. If you are going into a turn and you turn the wheel too fast, if you lose traction to the front tires, what's happening is your weight is transferring too quickly and the car is pushing. Okay, that's what's causing that left front to wear out. We're putting all the weight to the front of the car and now it won't turn. So we're dragging those tires across the track. It's overheating when we're doing that. Now, at a road course, you could fix this by, honestly, adjusting the brake bias and kind of slowing that weight transition, and the driver can do that on their own. But you can also get into a situation where the weight transfers back too slowly. So when that happens, now we're pushing through the middle of the turn. So now we're going to accelerate, and we still have too much weight in the front. So what you're trying to have is a balance here that allows the weight to kind of move backwards to the rear wheels. Usually this is all done through shock compression, shock rebound. It's also very driver specific. But once we go to the exit of the corner, Okay. We need the tires to be able to have traction to accelerate so the car can pull out of the turn. And usually that's going to be done through springs, shocks, combination of both. The art of this is that you need to make the suspension soft, but you also need the tires to get hot enough where they have optimal grip. That's why the tire temperatures are so important, because we know through, whether it was Hoosier, whether it was Goodyear, whether it was General, they would tell us, these are the optimal temperatures for the tire to be at. So if you make the suspension too soft, the tires are never going to get to that point. If you make the suspension too firm, they're just going to burn off the car. So, and I've said this before, this is two of the biggest, I guess, tricks I've ever been taught. First of all, as silly as this sounds, take a small jar, like a baby food jar, and just put a little bit of colored water in it and tape it to your dash. When you drive, try to keep that liquid as smooth as possible. And I honestly remember hearing jokes about drivers like Tim Richmond, how they could put a quarter on the dash and they could drive around and that quarter would not slide, would not move, that they were that smooth. The principle is that you want to eliminate harsh movements. Also, when you go to accelerate, you want to unwind your steering wheel to match your acceleration. It is the hardest thing to do. But if you can do that, if you can get to a point where your throttle input is tied to your steering going back to center and find 100% throttle as soon as you track straight, you will be the fastest car on the track every single time. Guaranteed. Now, with that said, let's talk about this game. When you have people playing this game, watching someone play this game, and you say things like, quote, you could feel. When you talk about it sends the car in motion, and quote, that's what it should do. And things like, and I can't even believe I'm saying this, quote, I could feel the type of wall. Again, I respect you guys. And I understand that you probably mean this from a good place. You cannot feel any of those things watching someone play a game. I'm sorry, you can't. And I understand that you might be taking visual cues from what you see, but you are actually watching someone play the game. So when you tell someone you can feel this car hit a guardrail as opposed to a soft wall, that is textbook overhyping a game. So we're going to go through this wreck. And this is a screenshot up the hill as we wreck. I want you to think back to that weight transfer discussion we just had. Think about a car going up a hill, okay? You have all the weight going to the back of the car. You have G-force pushing the weight back. You have gravity pushing the weight back. And yet we are counter steering up a hill. Now I want to be very clear. When you crest a hill, the car will become weightless for a second. And I can imagine almost every single one of you have experienced this. Maybe you've went over a hill too fast. Maybe you've been on a roller coaster and just for an instant you get that little weird sensation in your stomach. That is the weightlessness. This is also why you can't run a car too soft from a suspension standpoint or too hard, because what will happen is when you hit that kind of berm, the car is either going to float or it's going to sink into that transition, and the driver will be very unsettled. So, with that said, to the wreck. We are turning very hard on corner entry, which is fine, right? The cars in front of us do not seem to have any chassis roll. I think that's just the game having static models, okay? So we're going to take that for what it is. But I do want to back out and talk about something very important. If you look, we are trailing smoke. No other car is doing that. You can see smoke in the mirror. So if our car is handling so bad, we should be way off the pace. That would either be smoke off our left front, because again, we know from looking at the temperatures, we were dragging that tire across the track, or that would be smoke off the rear because we're kind of doing a burnout up this hill. Okay. But again, remember, going up the hill should give us traction back. Naturally, it should give us traction. For some reason, this is where, again, if you guys, and we're going to get into real NASCAR footage, real ARCA footage in just a moment. If you guys watch racing, you know that spinning out, going up a hill, makes little to no sense. So here we are. We're off the throttle, right? We know this. The car should be shifting all that weight back. And we are steering away from the wall. But we're going straight into it. Now, watch how much from the dash, watch how much chassis movement we have when this car leans hard. Now, remember, listen, there were Muppets that came into my comment section and told me I must not even watch NASCAR. So this right here is SVG on board Watkins Glen. Uphill, faster cars, more elevation on a chicane. Do you see any of this chassis flex in Chase Elliott or Daniel Suarez's car? When we get to the top of the hill, do you see it? Now, I know someone is going to be a Muppet about this and say, but Ryan, that's independent suspension. Okay. I know that. And understand that independent rear suspension should actually create more travel. So for the fun of it, I went back and I looked at ARCA. First of all, there is no chassis roll like this. I mean, look at these cars. They are literally planted. They are planted into the ground going up this hill. And I'm going to show you just how planted they are because, like we talked about, gravity and G-force, they're going to push down on the car going up. But remember, we talked about that cresting. So look at how much this car gives back when that weightlessness happens. So if you've watched NASCAR, if you've watched ARCA, if you've watched road course racing, you know this wreck is a massive red flag. This is a massive red flag that there is something seriously wrong with this game. Our car was either handling so bad that we should have been in no position to compete, or we have a game that is completely erratic in how it handles, to the point that we are literally dragging our front end across the track, smoking the tires, or doing a burnout up a hill to the point that we wreck. And when we go back and we look at real race footage, we know these things are very uncommon. Very uncommon. But what are we doing as content creators? We are sitting here talking about the tree. I kid you not. We are sitting here talking about the trees. And then you go on and you have, I don't want to say the audacity, but how else do you frame it? You watch this happen, and then you're going to sit there and you're going to say, these aren't driving off sliders. These aren't driving off game mechanics. But this is driving the track? And you're talking to me about a car in motion? Guys, you don't have to have worked on a race team a day in your life to look at this stuff. You could literally go back and just watch the race. Whether it's NASCAR, whether it's ARCA, whether it's Lime Rock, whether it's Watkins Glen, Sears Point, you name it. And no, something is way off. And to close this, because I'm sure someone will say, that was not tire smoke from locking up the brakes either. Because if that was the case, then the car should have went out of control as soon as you went under braking. This is a game that has physics that are absolutely off. And I will close by telling you, years and years and years ago, there was a game made by a company called The Sim Factory. And they tried to make an ARCA game off R Factor. And they came to me and they said, we would like to get some feedback from you. And I said my feedback is to not make a stock car game off R Factor, because many of us knew, again, having myself spent a lot of time with Jacques Villeneuve in his R Factor League, I said this game calculates traction off the right rear, off the left rear. And what happens is when you go to intermediate tracks and the game is calculating traction off only the rear, the car is going to act like a pendulum and it's going to swing back and forth wildly. And you're going to have a game that's very inconsistent. You're never going to understand where the edge of the car is. So you're going to enter a turn one time and you're barely going to save a car. You're going to enter the car the next time and you're not going to feel like the car was out of control at all. And then you're going to enter the turn the last time because you're in the wall. I want you all to go to these people's channels. I want you to watch this gameplay. Watch them go up the hill at Lime Rock. They only go up it 3 times. Every single time, the car acts dramatically different. Dramatically different. And I now think that is why when they showed this gameplay footage and everyone questioned, why are all these, game sliders being used for traction control, for stability control, this you can't wreck the car slider? Well, personally, I think some of it is they know the car is inconsistent. And the only way to build consistency back into what we're seeing is with all the use of these sliders. I have a feeling once this game gets out in the wild and you have regular people trying to play this game, they are going to see one of the most inconsistent handling racing games of all time. And I know that because I've looked at these tire temps and I've watched a wreck and I've compared it the same exact way I would have if we had tore up one of our own race cars. And it tells me something is very, very off. Love to know your thoughts on this. Appreciate you watching it. I'll be back as soon as I can with more